Hey there, welcome to Anatomical Gangster. I'm your host, Sue Hitzman. And on today's podcast, we're chatting with the infamous Madeline Black. Now, of course, if you are a Pilates fan, you've certainly already heard of Madeline, and most likely you've taken a course or two with her over the many years she has been an educator in the Pilates field. Madeline is known as an international leader in Pilates and movement education. Her life's pursuit is the discovery of how the body moves over a lifetime. Now, over the last 30 years in the field of movement, her curiosity explored all aspects of movement in dance, Pilates, yoga, in gyrotonics and fitness training, and from studies of human biomechanics, human cadaver dissection labs, osteopathic and manual therapies, the Madeline Black Method is an advanced movement approach that transforms the body for the better to improve movement, health, and improve physical capacity. Through Madeline's immersive trainings and workshops, movement professionals all over the world have gained the confidence and expertise needed to approach, identify, and assess movement patterns and apply their newly acquired skills to develop efficient plans and effective movement sequences for their clients. This is one of my favorite conversations, both the recorded and the unrecorded parts. Madeline is so kind and insightful. I think you'll enjoy what you hear. And remember, if you like this podcast, please subscribe to the channel, support it by sharing it with other like-minded souls looking for new information. And here is Madeline Black. Madeline Black.
Hey.
I am so happy to see your face. Welcome to Anatomical Gangster. I'm so grateful that you've got the time to just hang out and chat with me. I have your awesome book. Thank you so much. This is a long time coming, and I want everybody who will watch this new book centered, and your subtitle is Organizing the Body Through Kinesiology, Movement Theory, and Pilates Techniques. And you've even got a foreword from Marie-Josée Blum, is that you say?
Blum.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and Blandine Callis-Germain. I mean, how many books do I have of hers?
Right.
4 or 5. And then, of course, Gil Hadley and Andrew Vlaming, two of my, I think, most important people, so important in all of my career of understanding and deepening my appreciation for research and dissection and things like that. So I'm really excited to talk a little bit about this. And just so everybody can see, I mean, like, we're talking about a really dense book, great color images, which is so rare, on high quality paper, beautiful images, and spanning everything from just basic floor techniques to using the Pilates apparatus. So, congratulations for such a monumental work. I would love to have you share, for those people who don't know Madeline Black, head may be under a rock. I don't know what's happening. Will you just share a little bit about, your background and how you discovered Pilates and started to incorporate it into your own life, and what's transformed since then? Because this has been a lifetime for you, right?
Oh, complete lifetime. And, at my age and the era, where I started movement, we're talking 70s, and so there was not a whole lot of information. There were just these people doing this work, meaning for dance. I wanted to be a dancer. So my whole focus from a young person, I was like, I really just wanted to dance and create. And so through that journey, even getting into college, I knew I wanted to be in a professional company, but, that's not so easy. A very small percentage of people actually make it there. But I figured out a way to do that. And so, but through that, it's the training, so you have to think like 70s. Probably a lot of people weren't even born then. I love saying that because it's hysterical to me. But
we were in it. I mean, I was born in the 70s. I was born in 1970. But I mean, I think I say this a lot, but what epitomized health and wellness in the 70s were people like Jack LaLanne and Jane Fonda, right? And then Joe Pilates, to me, I didn't even discover Pilates until the 90s for me, where it was like all of a sudden you're hearing about this thing and I'm like, it's kind of like sculpt classes, the mat classes. But then you found out, oh, there's this apparatus, and like it really kind of changed my understanding of what he was trying to do to move ahead, kind of kinesiology, biomechanics, and things of that nature, right? But yes,
Yeah.
you're in the 70s. Keep going.
Yeah. So it's all my focus 100%. I was committed, athlete, committed person to dance, So it's hard training. You just train and you do everything. It was a choreographer who I really wanted to work with who said to me one day, he said, it would really benefit you to do Pilates. And of course, I was living then in the Midwest in Minneapolis. So I was in a professional company there. So it was like, what's that? So I got the only book there was at the time, you know, um, and it was mat work, but it was very familiar to me because I had studied with Hanya Holm, who had worked with Joseph Pilates. So that's a whole long story about that. But I all of a sudden was like, wait a second, I've been doing this movement for a long time. It's just nobody named it. So, but there was no apparatus. I didn't have exposure to that until my time frame in Minneapolis was up. And I'm originally from New York. I grew up there. And so I went back to New York because now I had a lot of connections with other dance companies, and I was still on this drive, to keep performing, which I did some when I went back to New York, but I needed a job. So, back in the mid 80s, the late 80s, personal training was just nobody, what's a personal trainer? And I got a job at the East Side Sports Medicine Center, and I got the gift of working with Marika Molnar. Today is a dear friend, and I always think of her as my mentor. She gave me a lot of direction. She just steered me this way, steered me that way, and so I did. I just, and I met Jean-Claude West, and he, I said to him one day, I said, wow, he's been a huge influence on my life.
Just such a brilliant practitioner. He's
Yeah.
so amazing.
And he said to me, he said, Madeline, he goes, I didn't do anything. He said, I just opened the door and you were the one who went crazy, so I did. I just needed answers. So there wasn't any kind of programming. I had no guidance. It was just pure, what's that? Oh my God, I got to know more about that. Oh, I went into orthopedic massage. I went into manual therapy techniques and integrative manual therapy. And I went into, I did. I just, I did a lot of fitness training. And of course, in New York, I started working as a personal trainer. I was like, I could do that. I taught dance. It's like, I could be a personal trainer, but there was no certifications. It was, ACE came out in, I think it was 1990. By that time I had moved to California. So yeah. I was like, oh, look, I can get a certification. At least I can say something. There was nothing. I have a degree, a BS in PE and dance, but there's really other credentials after that. It's almost like it didn't exist.
Yeah, so that's kind of the big deal, isn't it? That we kind of, I think that's, there's so many pioneers that I look up to in the 80s when I now graduated from college. I moved down to New York. I'm 20 years old. And all of the icons of fitness who were both in New York, California, and even Chicago. And by the time I was 24, it was the first time where I had applied to present at IDEA. And that was where you saw the best of the best people, and suddenly you're exposed to this kind of global network of real innovators, because much like you're saying, back then there's no internet, there's no social media, there's no influencers. We had fitness on television. I remember being 10 and watching the 20-minute workout with those hot girls and those little tiny outfits, thinking, when I grow up, I want my body to look like that. When am I going to look like that? And my mom's like, when you're 16, 17, and then 16, 17 comes, I'm like, am I ever going to look like those girls? But it's I think you're right. I mean, I think that the incredible thing about and what I'm hearing from you, and I think I've had a lot of other people that I talked to, where in the 80s it was a real melting pot of um, different ideas, different modalities, but you kind of just had to pave your own path, because I always
Hmm.
said, if when I was 20 there was actually a master's in longevity, I'd had it by then, right? And now, right, there's consciousness studies, we've got longevity studies, stem cell. There's so many ways to now look at the body far differently than we did
Hmm.
just even, I want to say, a decade ago, where then you think, nope, that's 4 or 5 decades.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right? So a
Uh-huh.
long while. And you've always been on my radar as someone who's continuously learned, recrafted, and brought your knowledge to the masses and sort of put your own spin on things, but also always giving way to the history of the educators that that had sort of paved some of the way, where they're opening doors and going, I hadn't thought about that, or I've never even seen that, right? So I think
Mhm.
that's a big piece about your work. And so now you're going from the 80s and 90s dancer to teacher to then educator. What kind of was that crossover from being another small personal trainer, dancer, educator, to suddenly getting put on the map of having literally thousands of people coming through your practice and things of that nature? What was
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
turning point for you?
I don't know what the turning point was, because it's like I'm a long distance swimmer. I love to swim, but it's like I just kept going, and just what appeared appeared. I moved to California out of New York, because I was already hitting 30, and it was clear, that I wasn't going to land that super company job. I was already 30. So, and there was a choreographer in San Francisco I really wanted to work with, and she invited me out to San Francisco. So I was like, hey, I love San Francisco. My brother lives in Berkeley. I have a sister in the South Bay. And I thought, San Francisco is cool. So it was 89, 90, I moved to San Francisco, still thinking dancing, you see, and I needed to work.
Mhm.
I needed income. So I went to the Bay Club, which is a fitness center. And that's where I got my ACSM certification. I had to take a course in order to pass that test. And I had to study math again. I was like, what? Algebra? Oh my gosh. But I remember it anyway, I applied for a job, and they were like, oh, you're overqualified. I'm like, what? I said, I'll pick up towels for $10 an hour. I needed a job. But no, they wouldn't hire me. They were like, no, you're overqualified. But then somebody I met said, you need to meet this personal trainer. She has a place, and I met her. And Jackie she was like Berkeley, UC Berkeley basketball. I mean, she
Mm.
was boom, like this is like, and I'm the skinny dancer comes in, and she's got the heavy weights, and she's really pumping people up. So we had a great relationship, because her people would complain, like, oh, my shoulder, I can't lift it now, because she's having them, overwork, or maybe, and so she'd say, okay, you go work with her for like a couple of weeks, and then come back to me after. And so we did this thing back and forth, which was incredible. So that was kind of like my fitness journey. But then at the same time, I really loved Pilates. I loved the movement. I loved teaching people how to move efficiently, and, really embody completely, not just go for the looks here, but actually be able to be more functional, even though I didn't know the functional word back then. So that journey, just so I wanted to work at a Pilates studio. So the only place to work with Pilates at that time in San Francisco was the hospital, St. Francis Hospital. They had Pilates in the PT section. So I was working out there. So it's like I already had a relationship, because I would go there and I'd have sessions, and then I'd go to the gym. I mean, I was crazy. I rode my bike all over San Francisco. I was doing the weights with this guy, or with Jackie, and then I was just working out constantly, and trying to live. I mean, it was just, but I learned a lot from all of that. And then at one point, I was applying for a job at St. Francis to work there, and they had a hiring freeze. So they weren't hiring. So then I was like, what do I do? And I have a friend who said to me, well, just open up your own place. I'm like, what do you mean open up my own place? Like, you know, so I can say I was the first private single studio in San Francisco, and I opened. There was nothing. Nobody even knew what Pilates was. That's the
Right.
other thing. You're like, what do you do? And then you have to go through this whole, explanation. So, and it was just build it and they will come, you know,
Well, and here
and I
you are,
started
and I mean,
just
clearly,
referring to me,
yeah, they have
yeah.
come. Now,
So,
how many people have you trained in your method? Because again, you have kind of your own style, your own protocol. You have curriculum, right? How many people have gone through your practice?
I have no number. It's really hard. I don't track that. I have no idea, to be honest with you. I'm so bad at that kind of thing. I don't track. I don't
And
know. I can't say.
do you have a community like where people still stay in touch with you? Do you have like
Hmm.
yeah, people in your whole collective, yeah?
Yeah, I do. And I haven't created like I'm just not a I don't know. I didn't create a company. I didn't create a corporation. I don't have my Madeline Black Method people, though there are people out there. I mean, people emailed, was there a Madeline Black Method person in my area? And then I say, yeah, here's this person, that person, who I know worked with me, but I haven't, because I really feel like, uh, I believe in the teachers that come and do movement have their own work. And, I'm one of their parts of giving them
That's
a
right.
synthesis that I have developed, and that I encourage them to use their mind, their body, their skills. Because a lot of times, even today, everybody has a lot of different trainings. It's not just one thing. There are a few people out there who only do one thing, right? But in fact, one of my yoga teachers used to say to me, Madeline, what's hindering your yoga practice is your extracurricular activities. Which what he meant was all the other stuff I was doing,
But
my
that's it.
hiking,
I
my
think
running, you
yeah,
know.
but how many people, and I mean, I'm that same way. I'm an educator, and when people come to take melt and things, they're like, "Is this all I need to know?" I'm like, oh, "If you're going to live under a rock, maybe," but there's so many other things, and so I share that, in the career, I've taken so many other people's certifications. I've read everybody's books. People send me their books, and I'm a reader, right? I mean, like I just like there's so many books on fascia. How many books can you have on
Right,
connective tissue? Well,
right.
they may be saying the same things in some ways, but each author is somewhat unique and new. And I mean, speaking of that, so here's this book centered, and again, the subtitle of this is Organizing the Body Through Kinesiology, Movement Theory, Pilates Technique, and Pilates technique. And again, like, the images are fantastic. There's a lot of anatomy here. You're giving them basic directives and then application, right? Talking about everything from the simplicities of breathing. We think
Yeah,
that's so simple, right?
right.
So, yet there's so much to be said about viewing that. So tell me a little bit about the book centered. Why now? Why this book? What's somebody going to learn when they grab it
So
from
typical of so I had an astrology reading, right? And the woman says to me, "Wow, I've never this is a very unique chart. I've never seen anything like this." And she says, "You're like Sweet Pea in Popeye, the cartoon." And that Sweet Pea would crawl. They're building a high rise in New York, and the metal beams moving like this. Do you remember and then the baby crawls and falls off, and then another beam catches it and
I
falls.
do remember.
She's like, "You're like Sweet Pea." So I've created so many manuals. I wrote teacher training programs for the Physical Mind Institute, which used to be the Institute for the Pilates Method, and then I started writing, and then all the workshops I was doing. And so I just had, these massive information and handouts for all these different kinds of workshops.
Mm.
And when Handspring Publishing started, like in 2000, and maybe, I don't know what year they started, but it had to have been around 2012 or 13 when they started. They were seriously looking for Pilates books. And Serena went to the PMA and said, "Okay, we're looking for authors. Who do you recommend?" And so they gave them a list of people. And she approached me, and I was like, "Oh, a book." And I said, "Well," I showed her all my manuals. I had a whole stack. I had covers and they were bound with the plastic, and I showed her all those things and I said, well, this is what I have. This is my work. I mean, this is what I teach. And she started looking through it and she's like, oh my God, you can put this into like a book. So she kind of recruited me, which is why that was 2015. That was the first edition. And it's in black and white, and it definitely is an upgrade. And the paper they use, you're right, it's beautiful paper. So it did very well. So they asked me to do a second edition. So that's really a second edition. It's so much better. But I
Yeah,
don't know if I'm
it's
answering your question. But
yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I have your first book and it's like, where they're using that more manila kind of paper, everything's
Mhm.
black and white. It's kind of
Yeah,
not as crisp, but
low
this
budget.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's really a beautiful book. And again, I really feel like when somebody puts to me, their body of work into a single place
Hmm.
where what everybody has to understand is that you're not going to learn one thing from Madeline. It's basically techniques and concepts for any body, any situation, whether you want
Correct.
to use a chair, whether you're on the floor, you're on a bed, you're on apparatus for Pilates. So to me, I think the beauty of your work is, while I think most people know you as kind of one of the Pilates gurus, one of the educators that's been out there for decades, you really have a touch point in so many different modalities. And I think so
Hmm.
many of the practitioners that I talk to come from a dance background. I do not. I took modern dance when I was in high school and I loved, I only just loved the choreography. Being on stage was always treacherous for me. But if I could be behind stage and get people to create, do, and move, I felt like that was my wheelhouse. But here you were front and center on stages performing, and then again, this educator who's bringing far more than just Pilates in your own interpretation of it, but there's so much more in this book and your first book. I mean, there's so many
Hmm.
things that people can learn. Do you think that in general, if you looked at people today, the lack of attention.
Hmm.
People I find don't read. Um,
Uh-huh.
when you
Hmm.
ask somebody, did you read the book? And they're like, what's a book? Right?
Right.
Can I
Right.
download it? Is it an Audible? I'm better,
Right.
and I think that there's
Hmm.
something to be said about really reading and the richness of reading. Do you think that there's kind of a turning point that we're at where you're trying to figure out ways to get younger adults to bring them into this very rich uh, kind of body of work that you have?
I can't say that I reach that demographic so much because what I think who's attracted to me are movement teachers, mostly Pilates teachers, but Pilates teachers are also yoga teachers, gyrotonic teachers, some of them, weight train, so I tend to attract because the education level, there's amount of anatomy, like basic anatomy, I go beyond that. So, it's so if you're a younger person, it's I like talking to younger people, when I can share, information with them about their body or their sport or what they're doing, they get very curious and they really want to know more, as opposed to the book. I think it would be too advanced for them maybe, you
Mm.
know. But I attract more teachers of 5 years or more because you learn the movement system, right? You learn what, the hundreds is or footwork on the reformer, or you in yoga you learn downward dog and upward, and you get the shapes, you get the movement, you understand the names, and they tell you a few things and you're ready to go, right? But then there's more. Then you're in person with a real person and you're like, oh, wait a second, that's not working for them. So then if they're a curious teacher, they start that process of like, I got to find out more. Or they just stay right there and just do the box and they're safe with the box and that's what they like. And there are people like that too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it would be great to get the younger people involved because today it's so different what they're interested in, I think, from what I see in social media and talking to them, unless they're in a sport. See that, and that was my drive to it was like, how do I improve my sport, what I'm doing, my body, how can I succeed in that? And if you don't have a goal like that, and so workout, oh, like my son, I'm I'm always badgering him, like, "What did you do? Have you worked out?" And he's just turning 30 this month, And like the other day, I talked to him. He says, "Well, mom, I started rowing and I really like it." I'm like, "Awesome! You got to do something, dude." Like,
It's
you know,
incredible, though.
yeah.
You
So
know,
it's like it, yeah.
I
Hmm.
think that, like, I look at you and I think to myself, you don't know how much benefit your practice, your journey is until you're older. Like I was on, scrolling the other day and I see this 30-year-old telling me how you combat menopause. And she went into great detail. And I was like, girlfriend, you're too young to be telling me about menopause. And I get it. Like, you can be very book smart, but there is a practical sense of experience that is relevant. And when I was in my 20s and I had studied collegiately and was very well versed in anatomy and physiology, and you kind of get to a place where you're like, I got this shit down. I'm like, I know everything, right? And then all of a sudden, when my body was in pain and I woke up and the bottom of my foot hurt me, and I'm like, I must have stepped on a piece of glass. It really it shook me because it takes the foundation of belief
Hmm.
and just crushes it. You form a belief that you know things. You form a belief because you've studied and you're learning something. But
Hmm.
putting it to work, and I think really going down that rabbit hole is something that's kind of precarious now. Like this new generation of educators, whether it's Pilates or
Hmm.
group exercise or something. I think we're sort of in a big paradigm for education. And I wonder, for you, I'm guessing now, you're in your 70s? Is that right? Can't
Oh
be.
my God, no, I'm not. Thank
You're
you.
60s.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn 67 in June, the end of this
67.
month.
I'm going to say,
Yeah, I'm
like, I know
close. I'm
you're like
close.
close, but I mean, when you're talking about a
Yeah.
30-year-old son, I'm like, is she that? Is she in her 70s? She looks fucking amazing for that. Even at 67, like to
Yeah.
the testament of not overdoing, of the no pain no gain theory that we were raised in, and realizing perhaps earlier on than many of our cohorts that maybe the no pain no gain theory is not necessarily what
Hmm.
we want, right? And so here, like as you're edging toward the late 60s going towards 70, do you feel resilient? Are you thinking that the work that you've done has afforded you the opportunity to say, gosh, I mean, I see other people my age and I know because you look fantastic. And like, does your body feel fantastic? Do you still adopt the practice that you do? What's going on in your life?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I was because my thoughts are going into my head right now, but you have to look at someone's whole life history. So the starting of doing more mindful movement and caring for my body more came later. I was a professional dancer. So, and I recently had a friend ask if she could watch because I have old videos, of some of my performing because she's never seen it. So just last week we were watching some of it and I was like, holy crap. I was just watching those legs bang, bang, jumping, running. Like, we would be in a piece for, I mean, one dance could be 35, 40 minutes. These aren't short little things. And you're just like constantly running and kicking and jumping and lifting and like and that's
Eating
one
your body
piece.
up.
That's one piece. And then you're doing four of them in a night, and I'm like, no wonder. No, I've still been trying to figure out what's going on with my body still. I've had incredible people look at me and they all have a different opinion,
Yes, and
but
isn't that it? It's an opinion, right? But it's like
well,
it's
they're doing
ourselves, right?
diagnostics. I mean, they're doctors and they're, very well-known physical therapists and but they each have their own take. One says I have I have a ligament, my SI joint needs, prolotherapy on my left side, and the other one's like, you don't need prolotherapy. What you actually need is, like more core work. And I'm like, shut the fuck shut
No,
up.
it's
You know what
okay.
I
You
mean?
can
I'm
say it.
like, are you kidding me? I'm like, do you know how much core work I do? I can stand on one leg. I can go like this. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like I can move. I move very well. So that part's good. It's just, yeah. I mean, I think with aging, what I love is Carla Stecco's research. on the aging fascia and how it gets thicker, and if there's been injury so that my issue is more like lower back, SI joint stuff.
Sure.
And I'm losing the ability to flex and extend in the range that I had before. But I think it's just accepting that's going to happen. At least for me, it's happening. Maybe someone else's body at my age, is still doing, backflips, or, full wheels and things like
Right.
that.
Maybe.
There are people like that. It's like
Sure.
those people living over 100 who smoke and drink and don't do anything, and they're living to 110. So there are those people, but for me, no, I think because I kind of say I'm an old pro football player. Go meet, a professional football player from the 49ers, and they're in their 40s and 50s. They're not playing anymore, and they're a train wreck. They're
They're a train
connective
wreck.
tissue. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not maybe that bad, but so I kind of feel like, no, it's, what, I enjoyed my life. I love that part of my life. It was so special to me. And to this day, it's like, I have injuries. I think the thoracolumbar fascia has just dried up, and I think there's a lot of injuries to it. I had a lot of, issues when I was dancing, but you just push through because you're younger.
Well, yeah, and I
So,
guess that's part of, I hope that anybody who's watching this who is younger and in dance, dancers, I think, make a commitment early on knowing that they are going to brutalize their bodies.
mhm,
If they want to perform on Broadway, they want to be
mhm,
in the ballet, right? They want to
mhm,
be on stage. You are going to have to endure the
mhm,
fact there's no way to leave the dance community unscathed. I have never
right,
in all of my
mhm.
career worked on a dancer where I'm like, wow, your body is like really great. Most of the time, like, I don't know how you're walking. This is really a
Yeah.
miracle to me, right?
Mhm.
So I've got a question, and I ask this one to every person that I interview, and I'm always curious what the answer is. So here's the question. If you could tell a younger version of you or anyone, if you met somebody on the street, what is it that you know that you don't think most people know? But if they did, it might very well change the course of their lives. It may improve their longevity, their resilience, and their well being. What is it that you think you know that most
Mm.
people don't know anything about?
Wow, that's a tough question because
I know.
I get the feeling a lot of people, because of access, to internet and all the information now, I almost feel like everyone has the knowledge of that. Um, but I think for me personally, as opposed to everyone else, I think just I wish I had the tools younger that I have today. The
Mhm.
tools meaning like getting on my roller, paying attention to I talked about fascia early on because of my influence from Marika Molnar. So I had already, and with Jean Claude, he worked with Louis Schultz, and I met him, and so I had a concept of it, but not to the
Degree we
state
do now,
I
of course.
now, right? So I feel like if I had that information, earlier, I could have been doing things. Because, as a dancer, we didn't do much. We stretched, but we were taking ballet class, we're in
Yeah.
rehearsal. Then I
Yep.
was running and I was swimming, I was lifting weights, and I was, but there wasn't any of that downtime, and then there's the necessity of your life, when you're, basically the main income earner, when you may hardly make any money, for a family, which one kid and an ex-husband, and then a single mom after that. I had to work in order to pay the bills.
Yeah.
So then there's the stress on top of that. So I don't know. I think it's, but I did it because I wanted to. It was my passion. It's almost like more than I wanted to. It's like I had to do it. It's just one of those things. So I don't know. I think just having to learn the tools. I think kids in school. I'm actually working on another little book, and it's way out from. I'm just got the outline going in a couple of chapters, so I'm not ready for anything. But I feel that people need to know when you can listen to your body and you feel a little tweak, a little tweak. That's what I do now. I'm like, oh, my ankle. Oh, you know what? It's something's not quite. It's just a little off. I got to get that fixed. Like I have to not fix it, but like I do my movement and I do this, and then it's like, oh, okay, that's so much better, as opposed to ignoring and just be like, oh, it's a little weird, and then you keep running, and then you keep doing this, and the next thing you know, your Achilles blows.
Yeah.
You don't, it's like pay attention to the paper cut. before it's a gash. So I want to kind of point out there are these tiny little things that if you can
Mhm.
just feel it, like you go like with your arm, you go, there's a little clicky in there. It's like a little sticky. Like someday it might be a little sticky, so then I know what to do. I do whatever my movements, I get on the roller, hanging, or I'm doing things. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, it's good. Not clicking, it's not sticking. I can feel it. So it's
Yeah.
kind of, those little things that you can do to make sure it doesn't, like you see rust on something. We have a lot of rust here. You start seeing a tiny bit of rust, man. You got to take care of it because the whole thing's going to get rusty.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. So I think, when I was younger, I think I maybe wouldn't have had as much this issue I have now that I manage perfectly.
I
If I
think
had
you're,
known that.
yeah, I mean, I think you're saying it in like such a simple way, because I think this is probably one of also my biggest messages that I share with people is, why do we wait for pain to
Right.
know that our body needs our help, when actually
Right.
you're getting these what I call pre-pain signals, right? Those
Hmm. Hmm.
subtleties, like you sit for long
Yeah.
periods of time and you get up and you feel like you aged 40 years because
Yeah.
your joints
Right.
don't work as well when you get up as they did just a half hour ago when you sat down. Those
Right.
are these subtle signs that hopefully anyone listening is like, yeah, that does happen to me. Or just how
Mhm.
Madeline's saying, you raise your arm up and you're like, wow, that's like not feeling great. And if you ignore those subtleties, those things that are little yoo-hoos can turn into, hey,
Exactly.
help
Ex-
me, right? So
Yeah.
before our bodies
Exactly.
are screaming, I think that that's a really big component of it. And also, I wonder, how do you feel about community in education? Do you think that community and working with and collaborating with other practitioners is something that we're missing in this day and age that we perhaps need to get a little bit back to? Because I feel like there was a time where, and I grew up in that kind of concept of like feeling completely alone in ideas and then going out there to say, I can't be the only one. And then
Mhm.
suddenly you're like finding your cohorts and going, oh my gosh, these people do exist. And then you're wanting to collaborate. You want to bring people together. You want to see if by bringing in people from all walks, you can expand. But I think that I wonder what you think about, again, like the way that technology, the internet, it seems like we're getting more isolated than more unified, even though
Yeah,
we have
I
all
would
these
love
things.
that. I actually would love that so much, that sharing, because when you get the opportunity to do that with someone, it's so amazing. I mean, yeah, I don't feel like I have it a lot, you know. I moved to Mexico, and now we have this, and but yeah, I worked on a project. It's kind of in the publisher's hands now with Elizabeth Larkham, my friend, and
Love her.
yeah, so she and I, for it's been 8 years, but we took, it started before COVID, and then so we co-edited a book, but we invited, like, what was, I forget the number, 25 Pilates based
Mhm.
people to do a case report on different health conditions. So, and then it's still insane. And we're just waiting for the first draft. I mean, we're still waiting, but for the last like 5, 6 years, it's been HELL. It's just been, I mean, just everybody's anyway. So that it was a nightmare. So she and I had to meet a lot and talk on Zoom. But she and I would all of a sudden, what I loved was we'd be like, okay, we have 2 hours. Let's get this chapter. Let's work on this. But we don't. We start talking, and then, but it had to do with the chapter. It's like the language. We got
Right.
not hung up, but we'd be like, okay, this is what this person's saying, but what does that really mean? And then she and I would just like go off, and the next thing you know, the 2 hours is up, and I'm like, we only edited one sentence. It's like, yeah. So, and that was just it was such a great experience. I miss it now. I mean, I miss it
Oh
because we're
yeah,
not doing that right now.
yeah.
Yeah, because the book is waiting to be published. So, anyhow, I mean, I miss that, and I attended a really great conference. You might want to look into it. It was in Denver called the Collaborative Care Collective.
Oh yeah, I saw. I think you
Yeah,
posted a picture of it. Yeah.
yeah. So this is the first time, and they are more, doctors and the PTs and some, you know, some other movement, but not a whole lot. Basically, it was PTs and doctors. Next year, they're going to do it again, and there's going to be more movement. And and Gil was there. He did a presentation, which was, of course, brilliant. But it was this desire to collaborate, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I
Not
think
just
it's
they were
important.
doing patients, but I think just as educators, I think it'd be awesome to get together more, maybe on a even regular basis with people, and just talk about what's interesting, what the research is, what's experience. I would love that. I'll sign up.
Yeah, well, hopefully we're still trying to coerce you to coming with Debbie Rosas and I in December to the Costa Rica event, which is just going to be, I think, amazing. Where, I'm reached out to Liz Larkham too. I'm like, you want to come? You let me know. Take a look at your dates. We'll do a friend and family pricing for you. Come
Yeah,
down, because I
yeah.
feel like we need it. I just feel like there are so many incredible women and male educators, but I think that
Mhm.
there's such an incredible group of female entrepreneurs, educators who are out there really, speaking on a topic so well that to bring everyone together, I think really amplifies, I think, the community that we are all a part of, which are people really trying to bring betterment and wellness to the world. And I think that
Mhm.
now more than ever, I think that we need more of that community feel, more of that connectivity, and I think this is how I think the younger generations can see that without connecting, you really miss the richness of what the
Mhm.
human experience is really all about, and
Yeah.
where else are we going to go but together, right?
Mhm.
I love
Yeah,
it.
I love that. Yeah, I love that vision.
So now you're in Mexico. Do you do trainings down in Mexico? What is like, how can somebody find out more about what you're doing, where you're doing, what are you doing? Tell us.
Yeah. So here, when I'm here, I'm not here all the time, but I'm here most of the time. I do a Zoom. Like I just did a coordinating ground forces foot workshop last Friday
Love that.
for a group in the UK, and I'll do another one in a couple weeks. So I do that. But what I'm doing now, because this is what I'm interested in terms of teaching teachers, is really 5 days intensives. That's what I want to do. So I go away for that. But I've been doing, and it's based on the book, but then I always augment it because I'm already evolved from that book. There's other things that have come in. So, and I invite teachers to come for 5 days and we just work together. And this is where they get to bring their skills, their knowledge, their questions, and I create the space for them, to really grow. And it's really a special experience. So, and I have several studios that I have done this at. So I'm going to do it in China in July
Wow.
and then Singapore in August. So both studios I've been to before. So it's a return thing. And next year I'll be in Italy. I got to come. The Italy one is just amazing.
Maybe I'll
Um,
come to that one.
in May, at the end of was April 30th through May 5 or 4. It's
And
5
so
days, but
if somebody wants to find out about these, do they just go to madelineblack.com?
yeah, it's on my website, and I post. So, I don't have help anymore. I have one friend who's like my admin, and she helps me, but I don't have a team like I used to have. So I do my own posting, and I'm kind of lame at it. But whenever it's coming up, I'll post. So mostly Instagram and Facebook. I have a Facebook group, Madeline Black Experience, I think I call it, because I feel like my work is really an approach.
Yeah.
There's a method, but it's like how I approach the body, and then I want to see how you approach the body, and let's see if I can give you some guidance to really improve your eye, improve your hands. I do a lot of hands-on work, and that's the beauty about the Pilates apparatus is I use it as another set of hands. That's why I say Pilates techniques, because you're like, what techniques the Pilates has? And Joseph Pilates didn't really have technique unless you're thinking
Right.
about dance technique, but I actually use the apparatus as another set of hands.
I love that.
So that's what I do mostly. And I do sessions, Zoom sessions for clients, not a ton, mostly teachers. I'm helping teachers with their bodies,
I love that.
which I love. I love because they're smart and they know, and then I can look at them and guide them. And because everybody needs sessions. We all do.
Yes, we
you
all
know?
need to connect and learn and grow because there's just so much out there to learn. And much like you said, while,
Mhm.
it's all right here at my fingertips, there's really
Right.
even more at your fingertips in things like this, like to really
Mhm.
put your eyes to a book, slow down and really, take in information and then try to embody that for yourself. And of course, because your book is more geared toward a practitioner, somebody who,
Mhm.
like you said, kind of already has a little bit behind them. I feel like it's a rich deepening of that idea to not only help others, but to help yourself to embody the practice a little bit
I've
more.
had quite a few clients buy the book
Yeah.
because they want to learn about their body.
Yeah.
And people need to learn. It's amazing how many people in the world here don't know anything about their body.
Oh, yeah.
I had a friend here. I mean, she's a lovely lady, and she's very athletic. And she took me out on the stand-up paddleboard right out here, and we were searching for whales. And she's very daring and all that. And then one day and then I do classes. I mean, I practice and invite people to come. So I tell them I'm not teaching you, though I am, but I need to practice. Let's get together as friends and practice together. And she was struggling with her shoulder. It's one of those things where she's like, she's a little sticky. And I said, Amy, you got to take care of that because it's just going to get worse.
Yeah.
If you don't, you have to pay attention to
Yeah.
that. And she had no idea. And so she came over for a session. I have a table here so I can work. So I started, and then I was like, well, your clavicle is not rotating. She goes, what's a clavicle? I'm like, oh, your
Yeah.
collarbone. Oh, it's supposed to move. Yeah, I said, your shoulder blade, like when you raise your arm, your shoulder blade's not sliding on your rib cage. It's completely glued. That's why and she's like, my shoulder blade's supposed to move? I don't even know
Yeah.
what that is. So now
Yeah.
I had to show her a picture.
Yeah.
That's your shoulder blade.
But that's it.
And
I
it
think that
is.
the general public, I
Yeah.
always feel like, you're a spirit occupying a body and utilizing a mind to have a human experience. You're not taking this body with you. So think
Right.
of it like your own personal transportation vehicle that is doing things for you. And much like your car and getting it serviced and checking in, right? If my car's making a funny sound, I can look under the hood all I want. But if I'm not an expert at that, I want to call in an
Mhm.
expert and be like, are you hearing that weird clicking sound? Because that doesn't sound right, right? So I
Right.
think that there's a piece of this where, I'm an advocate of self-care. I always say self-care is the best healthcare. But being
Mhm.
educated and armed with knowledge because you've at least experienced a hands-on body work session, maybe somebody has evaluated your range of motion, your breath, how you move,
Mhm.
and kind of giving you new strategies. And often, you see something going on up here, but if you're not looking down at the other hip and down that leg, like maybe
Right.
there's a whole kinetic chain that is so dysfunctional. You just
Mhm.
keep taking a ball and jamming it into your neck that hurts
Right.
you. It's like beating up the victim, right? Don't shoot the
Right.
messenger. Try to get somewhere else in the conversation. I think all of
Right.
these things are great. It's great advice. I think, and I'm just always a fan of yours, Madeline. I just think,
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you.
one of the greatest pioneers. I really think, you've really put out a very loving education. You bring out a lot of vibrant energy in how you deliver messages and such. And I just think, again, if people haven't heard about this stellar, multiples of decades of work, hopefully here maybe a few more people will come to your trainings. And my gosh, I do hope to corral you into an event. Maybe
I'll I'll email you. I'll
yes,
email
I'm telling you, I'd love to get you, Liz Cook, like the whole clamor of,
That would be really fun.
yeah, to
Yeah.
get some of the women out there and bring us all together and see what we can do to create an event that really just provides healing and connection and laughter and wellness, because I think we need more of that in the world, right?
Definitely.
Amen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Madeline, thank you so much for coming on
It's
Anatomical
always fun
Gangster.
talking to you.
Yeah, I mean, I
Thank
could
you.
I could really chat with you for hours. And for those of you who are listening to this and you stayed to the end, if you enjoy these conversations with all of these brilliant minds, make sure that you subscribe to the Anatomical Gangster page, and a lot more to come with a podcast coming this September. So keep with us and we'll see you soon. Thanks again.